Hi there, this is a second part movie for the first lecture on comparative literature presented by Sumio Umegawa with my old picture. This is when I was about 8 months or 9 months with my grandfather. So for the second part, I'm going to talk about the rough history of Chinese dynasty. Even though I actually talks history in a very rough way, however, in comparison with the first movie and third movie, the second one is going to be uh, rather long. Therefore, if you want to, shorten the time of watching movie, you can actually use English only version. And if you want to understand Chinese history of dynasty rather well, I would recommend you to use your time a bit longer and choose the with Japanese version. It's up to you. So let's start with the legendary period of China. In this legendary period, is actually the period of three Huan kings and the five Ti kings were the ruler of the area of so-called China. And in this particular period, the kingship was transmitted in accordance with something called virtue. So if I were a king and I would like to retire from the position of the king, I have to find someone who is virtuous as much as I am. So there is no blood lineage. We do not know the names of three Huan kings. They are usually referred to as heavenly, mundanely, and earthly. However, we have certain specific proper names for 5D kings. Although there are several different theories about it, still the last three D kings are always the same. The kingship was passed from King Yao to King Shun, and from Shun to the last of the five D king, Yu. And when it came to the time for Yu to start thinking about his retirement, the dynamism of the history starts to move. Following to the legendary period, Xia dynasty emerged. The period of this dynasty is assumed to have been sometimes from 2000 BC to 16,000 BC. And they used to have no evidence for its real existence. But recently, there are growing archaeological evidence started piling up, and therefore the existence of Xia dynasty is nowadays openly reassured. Especially our little historic site is considered to be the capital of Xia dynasty. Anyway, the most important part of this earliest dynasty is how the kingship transmitted. Yu, the last of the five T, transmitted the rulership to his son on his retirement. His son might have the virtue as great as Yu himself, but here we see the hereditary transmission of kingship, which becomes a limestone of the emergence of dynasty. So after this, kingship or the rulership started to be transmitted in accordance with bloodline, basically from father to his son. And with this transmission of hereditary transmission is called the dynasty, the emergence of dynasty. Xia dynasty was followed by Yin dynasty, which is also known as Shan dynasty. The period of this dynasty is assumed to have been sometimes from 16,000 BC to 1046 BC. This dynasty used to be legendary as well, because there had not been any evidence for its existence. However, Yingxu, the ruins of the capital of Yin, was discovered in 1928 at Hunan province, and this discovery confirmed that the legendary Yin dynasty really existed. Uh, the important feature of Yin dynastic period is the emergence of letters, which is known as shell characters, as they were written or carved on the shell of turtle or sometimes on the horns of deer. They are probably the earliest extant letters in China and considered as prototype of Chinese characters we use now. These shell characters were the records of important information. What sort of information they recorded then? It was the record of divination. Divination in ancient China was very, very important. The following dynasty was the famous Zhou dynasty, which started 1048 BC until 249 BC. This particular dynasty was founded by King Wen and his son Wu. This dynasty is usually divided into two phases, early period of Zhou and later period of Zhou. The early period is known as Western Zhou, whereas the later one is as Eastern Zhou. This is because of the location of their capital. When the power of the nation of Zhou was strong, they set their capital in the western part. But once their national power weakened, they moved their capital to the east. But the shift of capital was not something like from Xi'an to Beijing today. It was more like from Osaka to Kyoto. Because the time of Zhou dynasty does not indicate the period of when Zhou dynasty occupied all the land of China. When I said the power of nation, it doesn't really indicate the power of nation of China as it is today. So let's say this is the area of China, but at that period there are so many mini states gathering in this area. And when we say the Xia dynasty, it was the period when the mini state of Xia had a power, or Xia was a leader of the other states. And when we say the period of Yin or Shan, it is a period when the mini state of Yin had the power, or the state of Yin was the leader of the others. So similarly, the period of Zhou dynasty indicates when the mini state of Zhou had the power and it was the leader of the other nations. However, when the state of Zhou started to lose the power as a leader, it indicates the Eastern Zhou period. All the other states started to fight against each other to in order to become the next leader. And this period is called Spring and Autumn period. It was the time conflicts amongst all the other states happened. But as the time went by, the powerful states were, limited. So when some powerful states still continued to conflict amongst each other, it is called the Warring States period, and there were 7 powerful states at that period. So, as a result, Zhou dynasty are divided into Western Zhou, the earlier period, and Eastern Zhou, the later period. But This later period, Eastern Zhou, are further divided into spring and autumn period as well as Warring States periods. And altogether, this period, I mean the spring and autumn and Warring States period are sometimes called spring and autumn and Warring States period, which is actually equalized with the period of Eastern Zhou. Although there are so many important things we should note about the Zhou dynastic period, it should be mentioned for this series of lecture. Um, During the Zhou dynastic period, especially when the Eastern Zhou period or spring and autumn period started, we witnessed the emergence of so many various philosophers and so many thoughts. For instance, we had Confucianism and Taoism and etc. And those philosophers and thinkers emerged in order to improve their lives because they were in a very chaotic state. They were in a chaotic conflict. Some studies say if there were 1,000 people in this spring and autumn period, and once two states started the fight, then there would only one person who could survive. So see you tomorrow doesn't really indicate seeing the other person tomorrow in this period. So the following is the Qin dynastic period, and the reign of the Qin dynastic period was approximately from 246 BC to 202 BC. So it's quite a very short period of time. And this particular dynasty was founded by Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of the Qin. And as many of you may know, this is the first ever unifying dynasty of China. By the way, the title Huangdi was created by Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of the Qin. He actually combined three Huang kings, the title of Huang from three Huang kings, and five Di kings, born from the legendary period, and created the words Huangdi. It indicated I am much greater than Huang kings or Di kings. And because the later Chinese people couldn't think of better title to indicate the person who is standing on the top of the state nation. So afterwards, Chinese dynasty or kingdom or whatever uh, continuously used this title Huangdi. So, as I said, the Qin dynasty was the first ever unifying dynasty in China. But how did the state of Qin unify the area of China? As I said, at that period, the Chinese area were divided into many small states. And let's say there were a state of Mei besides the state of Zhou. And if the state of Mei or state of Ume had a conflict against the state of Zhou, and of course the state of Mei or state of Ume lost, then the state of Ume or state of Mei becomes a follower or the supporter of the state of Zhou. Therefore, for instance, during the Zhou dynastic period, it was something like this. All the states except for the Zhou were the followers or the supporters of the state of Zhou. The state of Zhou was the leader, and all the other states were individual states, but the followers or the supporters. However, the state of Qin had a different strategy. So if the state of Mei or state of Ume had a conflict against state of Qin, and again the state of Ume or state of Mei lost, then the state of Ume should become the state of Qin. For instance, my name is Umekawa, and if I do the rock scissors papers with you, and when I win against you, I would say, okay, now you are the Umekawa family or something like that. So at the end, all the states become Qin. So this is how the Qin dynasty unifies the area of the China. After the unification of the Qin dynasty for a short while, we witnessed the emergence of the Han dynasty, which enjoyed a rather long period of time from 202 BC to AD 220. And just like the case of Zhou dynasty, this Han dynasty is usually divided into two minor periods as well. The earlier period is called former Han, whereas later period called later Han. And very roughly to say, we witness the birth of Christ between the former and later Han period. And when the period of former Han, they had their capital at Chang'an, today's Xi'an. Whereas when it came to the later Han period, they moved their capital to Luoyang. So just like in the case of Zhou dynasty, sometimes former Han is called Western Han, whereas later Han is called Eastern Han. It should also be noted that when the Han period shifts to the next period, um, at the end of the later Han period, we witnessed the Yellow Turbans revolt, and even though the Han Empire continued after the Yellow Turbans revolt, the historians usually regard the Yellow Turbans revolt as a kind of periodical shift. So we usually regard Yellow Turbans revolt as the end of the later Han, and it is a trigger of the periodical shift, even though the empire of the later Han existed after a while. So after the Yellow Turban, we move to the period called Three Kingdoms. This period is when China was divided into several nations again, namely Wei, Wu, and Shu. The state of Wei was the country founded by famous Cao Cao. Wu was by Sun Qian, and Shu by Liu Bei. The state of Wei founded by Cao Cao was later taken over by Sima family and changed the state name as Jin. It was always Wei or its successor Qin, which possessed the strongest power amongst three states. Therefore, sometimes Wei and following Qin represent the Three Kingdoms period and called Wei-Qin period. This period was followed by southern and northern dynastic periods. In the northern part of China above the Yangtze River, many non-Han tribes established states, whereas in the southern part of China below the Yangtze River, states were created and ruled by Han Chinese people. We can see many rises and falls of non-Han foreign states in the northern part, whereas those of Han Chinese states in the southern area. It should be noted that the continuation of three kingdoms in the southern and northern dynastic period are sometimes put together and also recognized by another periodic name. Throughout these two different periods, there appeared and disappeared six states, all of which set their capital at today's Nanjing. All of them witnessed the emergence of high quality literature. Therefore, when we regard these continuous periods from literary point of view, these two periods were unified and recognized as six dynastic periods. So let's summarize this complexity. Three Kingdoms period is followed by Southern and Northern dynastic period, when there existed several small states. Three Kingdoms period is sometimes represented by the state of Wei and Qin. Therefore, the Three Kingdoms period are very often called Wei-Qin period as well. But from geographical point of view, as the land of China was not unified as before, these two periods, Three Kingdoms and the Southern and Northern, were put together and regarded as a continuous period under the term Three Kingdoms and the Southern and Northern dynastic period. This continual conception is also called Wei-Qin Southern and Northern period sometimes. The same continual dynamism is also conceived as six dynastic periods, especially from a literary point of view. In order to avoid confusion, however, I will use the light blue rendition for this particular period throughout this lecture, Wei-Qin period. This complicated period was followed by the Second Unification. The Sui dynasty, which existed from 581 to 618, reunified the land of China and became the second unifying dynasty. And this dynasty was followed by Tang Dynasty, which started in 618 and ended in 907. This one of the most powerful and the greatest dynasty is usually divided into four phases. This division is connected with the flourishment of Shi-style poem. Shi style achieved its golden period during this particular dynasty, and the poems composed during this period are specifically appointed as Tangshi. Anyway, the first phase is called early Tang, when the national power and the creation of Shi started to rise. The second phase is golden Tang, when the national power as well as the Shi flourishment reached its golden period. Then we have middle Tang period, when the national power as well as the Shi creation started to decline, which followed by ending phase, when the national power was about over and the flourishment of Shi style was also ending. The turning point of dynasty was a famous love romance between the Emperor Xuanzeng and Yang Guifei. Because of this, the golden period of Tang started to decline. Okay, next to the Great Tang stood the Song dynasty, which started from 960 to 1279. Again, this period is usually divided into two phases. The earlier period is generally known as Northern Song period, when the empire controlled the northern part of China above the Yangtze River as well. Whereas the later period it is called Southern Song, as the empire only ruled the southern part of China below the Yangtze River. Again, there were so many important things I have to note about the Song dynastic period. Let me give you 2 points. Uh, During the Song dynastic period, we witnessed a dramatic increase in literacy percentage. Uh, some scholars argues that Song dynasty might be the uh, best intelligent dynasty in the history of Chinese dynasty. Also, we witnessed new dynamism in philosophy and religion. We witnessed the new concept of Confucianism as well as new style of Taoism. Both of them are called Neo-Confucianism or Neo-Taoism. Song dynasty was taken over by Yuan dynasty from 1271 to 1368. This particular dynasty was the first ever non-Han empire, which means the ruler was not Chinese but Mongolian. It should be noted that it was this particular period when Tibetan Buddhism was really transmitted to mainland China. The following dynasty was Ming, which was the Han Empire again. Two Confucian groups flourished during this period, Chuzi group and Yangming group. Even though both groups belonged to Neo-Confucianism and New Confucian style, they had very different understandings onto Confucian text. Therefore, as both groups became influential, their conceptual conflicts gave deep impact onto Ming society. One of these influences can be seen in the flourishment in vulgar culture. Ming was a sort of golden period for erotic pictures, aphrodisiacs, and etc. The access to these items was apparently quite easy. Under these circumstances, we also witnessed the emergence of four great strange stories, one of which was a famous Journey to the West. So, if you read these four stories carefully, you can find many evidences of the cultural vulgarness during the Ming period. This Ming was followed by Qin dynasty, which reigned China from 1644 to 1912. Qin was the second non-Han empire, and Chinese people were ruled by Manchurian. And it was during this period when Chinese met the West, which caused a great impact onto China. It should be also noted that this is the last dynasty in China, and let's say Qin dynasty roughly correspond with Edo to Meiji era in Japan. So this is the end of the second part. So see you again in the third part movie.